So on Saturday, we had Berkshire Hathaway's annual shareholders meeting, and it is literally the Super Bowl for all value investor. If you're somebody who considers yourself to be a value investor going off of the style of Warren Buffett, this was literally your Super Bowl, because this is where we get insights from Warren Buffett, who talking to us about investing, talking to us about basically any question that you had for him. I mean, we had a 97-year-old guy in Charlie Munger and a 90-year-old guy in Warren Buffett who answered questions for like 4.5 hours. And the greatest part of the whole thing was they didn't even have to go to the bathroom. They didn't even take a potty break, like the whole time. They answered questions for 4 hours and then get up, didn't do anything. And they were drinking their usual Cokes and eating their peanuts or whatever it is that they ate on stage, and they didn't have to go to the bathroom. That is extremely impressive. One of the things that Warren Buffett talked about during the shareholders meeting that I think was just great insight, and I wanted to share it with y'all, was he did this presentation where he showed us the 30 largest companies as of March 31st in this year. And so I'm just going to pull that up. As you can see on the screen, we have the usual companies. We have Apple. If you don't know what Saudi Aramco is, Saudi Aramco is an oil company in Saudi, of course, but it's technically owned by the government, but they listed it recently. I did an entire podcast talking about this. If you want to check that out, Rambling Mind Podcast, you can check it out on all platforms. Of course, we have the usual suspects. We have Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, have a couple of Chinese companies in here, Taiwanese companies in here, Korea, China. And then basically, he just posed the question. He said, how many of these companies do you think existed 30 years ago? I want you guys to think about it. Let's just play this clip. Let me just play this clip, and then you understand where we're coming from.
Population, just a few hundred years ago. But what I would like you to do is look at that list for a minute or two, if you want to, and then make an estimate, make your own guess. How many of those companies are going to be on the list 30 years from now? Here they are, these powerhouses. And how many would you guess are going to be on the list? Well, you know, it's not going to be all 20. It may not even be all 20 today or tomorrow. Because this was March 31st. But what would you guess? And think about that yourself. Would you put on 5, 8? Well, whatever it would be. I would now invite you to look at slide 2, or L2, which goes back a little more than 30 years, and look at the top 20 from 1989. And if you look at the top 20 from 1989, there's 2 things that should grab your interest, at least 2. None of the 20 from 30 years ago are on the present list. None. 0. There were then 6 U.S. companies on the list, and their names are familiar to you. We have General Electric, we have Exxon, we have IBM Corp. I mean, they're still around. Merck is down there at number. None made it to the list 30 years later, 0. And I would guess that very few of you, when I asked you to play the quiz a few minutes ago, would have put down 0. And I don't think it will be 0. But it is a reminder of what extraordinary things can happen. Things that seem obvious to you.
Just think about that. How many of the companies that we currently love, the Facebook, the Microsoft, the Apples, the Google, how many of those are going to still be around 30 years from now? That like really dragged me, because I'm a big Microsoft guy. I'm a big Apple guy. I'm like, yo, these companies are going to keep growing. But his point was basically like, one of the greatest things you can do for yourself, for most people, is to invest in index funds, is to invest in a well-diversified fund, is to invest in a well-diversified S&P 500 fund, if that's what you prefer. Because this way, as the world changes, you're always going to be riding the wave. Like if you had invested here when we had companies like ExxonMobil as one of our top companies, IBM, AT&T, all these companies on here, but then you kept on investing 30 years later, and now Microsoft and Apple and all of those are still on top. Guess what? You're fine. You're fine because you're just tracking the market. So as these companies fall off, these other companies are taking the place. So you're still appreciating in value. I mean, look at the companies. The most valuable company in the world at that point was Industrial Bank of Japan, which was worth $104 billion. Apple is worth $2 trillion. $2 trillion. You can just see like your money was still growing. Your money was growing on your behalf. And one of the things he said during the interview was this was not like a crazy inflationary period where all of a sudden we saw everything priced way higher. Nah, we didn't have that crazy of an inflation. We didn't even have that. Even right now, we're not seeing that much inflation. Like now we're getting scared because we're seeing a little bit of inflation, but we weren't seeing it then. And we haven't seen it up till this point. So my point is, it's a lot easier to just track the market. As the market goes higher, you go higher. As long as the economy keeps doing well, as long as new companies keep being established to create some kind of value proposition for you and I, we will do well. So don't get caught up with all the noise that's always going on of, oh my gosh, we're going to have a crashing market, of, oh my gosh, this is the industry to be in. This is the thing that I need to be buying. This is the thing that I need to be investing in. Don't get caught up in all that. When you have a long-term mindset, things are going to ebb and flow. Some companies are going to fall. Some companies are going to rise. But as long as you stay the course, you will always be in the best position. You will always be in the best position. But anyway, that's all I have for y'all. I hope y'all learned one, maybe two things out of this entire thing. And really, go watch this entire interview. I know it's like 5 hours long, but for anybody who is trying to learn how to pick stocks, trying to learn how to just think through companies, it's a necessary listen. Like there's so much insight. And he just basically answers. It's so entertaining. Well, for me, it's extremely entertaining. But I don't know if it's entertaining for everybody. But yeah, there's so much insight that they give, or he gave, and also Charlie Munger just doesn't give any two flyings of F anymore. He just says whatever comes to mind, and he doesn't care at all. And there's a lot of good insights. I don't agree with them on everything, but you don't have to agree with somebody on everything to learn one or two things from them. But anyway, I'm gonna catch y'all later. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. God bless each and every single one of y'all, and we out of here. Peace. Whoosh.